I had $400 in my pocket, one bag on my back, and no one waiting for me in America. The moment I walked out of the airport, I understood what it really meant to be completely alone in a foreign country. From that moment on, I knew that if I could not stand on my own feet here, everything would be over. So I told myself one thing: no matter what happened, I would not give up. Sorry, let me pause the story for just a second and ask you something right now. Where are you listening from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments. I'll read every reply with real warmth, truly from the heart. My name is Malik. That first night, I stayed in a cheap motel. There was no refrigerator in the room, the window barely closed, and the bed smelled like old laundry. But at that moment, it was shelter. Early the next morning, I went out and spent the whole day looking for work. Everywhere I went, people asked me the same questions. Do you have experience? Are your documents in order? Do you have a car? The moment I said I was newly arrived, their faces changed. Some sent me away politely. Others told me they would call, and I already knew they never would. On the third day, I got hired at a warehouse. The job was not easy. From 6 in the morning, I was carrying heavy boxes, stacking them, loading them, unloading them. My hands cracked, my back burned, but the paycheck mattered more than the pain. When I came back to the motel at night, my legs hurt so much that sometimes I was too tired even to take off my clothes. Even so, I wrote down every expense: how much the room cost, how much I spent on food, how much was left on my bus card. I knew very well that a man who has little must be strongest in how he manages it. 2 months later, I moved out of the motel and into a tiny rented basement room. The window sat at ground level, and I saw sunlight for only a few minutes a day, but at least I could breathe there. At night, exhausted, I would lie down and watch videos on my phone about people building a life from nothing. That was when I realized that living only for a paycheck would never save me. If I spent my whole life carrying boxes in someone else's warehouse, my condition might improve a little, but nothing essential would ever change. So I started saving money. Every extra shift they offered me, I accepted. I stopped having days off. Warehouse work in the morning, delivery jobs in the evening, and on Sundays, I helped a man move furniture with his old van. That was when I saw my first real opportunity. People were willing to pay simply for someone to show up on time, lift their things carefully, and deliver them without problems. That was when I understood that work was not just muscle. Work was trust. After 9 months, I bought my first used van. It was old, the paint was peeling off the door, and the engine made sounds I did not like. But to me, that vehicle was more than a machine. It was my first real tool of freedom. I still worked at the warehouse during the day, but in the evenings, I handled my own jobs. My phone did not ring constantly, but when it rang, I went. A couch that needed to be carried to a third floor, I went. Boxes to move in the rain, I went. A late night emergency pickup from a store, I still went. Little by little, I got more clients. The people who called me once called me again. Because I was never late, I told them the price in advance, and I never added hidden charges along the way. Then I officially registered the business, opened a separate bank account, and organized every payment carefully. Around that time, a man I knew suggested we work together. He said he would bring in the clients and I would do the service. At first, he really did help. But soon I noticed that some of the jobs that should have come to me were disappearing. I checked messages, dates, and payments, and I realized that someone else was benefiting from my work. That evening, I understood for the first time how expensive it can be to be too trusting. But that became a lesson too. I did not make noise. I put the documents in order, contacted the clients myself, confirmed the amounts, and told that man directly, either you return everything and get out of my way, or I will take this further officially. He returned the money, but from that day on, I understood that success is not only about strength, it is also about caution. 2 years later, I bought a second van. Then I rented a small warehouse. After that, I started working with commercial clients. Today, I own several businesses and have employees of my own. And every time I pay them on time, I remember the days when I was counting my last dollars and did not know how I would pay rent the following week. People often think a person gets lucky one day and everything starts from there. That was not my story. My life changed the day I had no one left to rely on and still got up. When my body hurt and I still worked. When I was betrayed and still did not fall apart. When I moved slowly but never went backward. So if today you feel like it is too late, too hard, or that nothing will ever come from you, believe me, I felt all of that too. But the hardest beginning does not mean you are meant for a bad ending. Sometimes it is only the place where your character is tested. I arrived in America with $400 and no one waiting for me. Today I know this for sure. A person can start with nothing, but if they refuse to give up, one day they become the very reason someone else finds hope.